starting now, and say, hey, welcome to Fall 21 and our new version of the Respondus lockdown browser and monitor training. It's just not exactly new and improved, but slightly revised. For those of you that have been with us for quite a long time, you know that Respondus lockdown browser is not new to NCC. The newest portion of it would be the monitor portion, which is the addition of being able to record people's environment and their desktop and other things. I beg your pardon, not their desktop, but their environment while they're taking the exam, while they're in the lockdown browser is sort of the newest piece. And we were using it prior to the pandemic. But one thing that happened when the pandemic occurred, for any of you that were involved with doing proctored testing over the last year and a half, was that Respondus lockdown browser at the time wasn't working with Chromebooks, and we knew that that was a little bit of an issue with our students that were forced into remote learning, just like our faculty were, and had only a Chromebook to work with. So in order to do proctored testing, we solicited a new product for that period of time. You might remember that name, Proctoria. You might not. Hopefully we'll forget about it real soon. And that existed over the past year or so. And now we've brought Respondus back. So hopefully we'll hit on a lot of interesting things. And I do really appreciate any questions you have as I go along. If I think we're gonna answer that question in the upcoming minutes because of my presentation, I'll certainly just shelve it, but I don't mind answering things on the fly. Are we ready?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Come on.
Yes.
And who wants the Padlet? Of course, I'm going to send you the link, and I'll do that right now. And nice thing about this is, you know, this is a living document, if you want to say document. And when I make changes here, whenever you go and use this resource, it will be updated and most recent. So I obviously made some changes prior to this workshop, and here we go. So a Padlet, for those of you that are unfamiliar, is nothing more than what I call a wall of stickies. There's a couple of different formats that you can use. I've chosen a format where basically we have the underlying topic using Respondus at NCC, but each column is more or less a particular category that I've thrown these sticky notes or posts into those columns to provide the information relevant to that title of the column. All right, and it's really a matter of scrolling down when you're in a column. And you can see some of these columns are a little bit longer than others, have a little bit more material or posts in them. And then your first four here are relevant to Respondus very particularly. And we just like to provide some general resources to you in our Padlets, knowing that we have a website, for instance, recordings of previous ed tech trainings are on that website, as well as other resources and information. So we'd like to take you there. And also, can't mention this enough, remember that we're continuing with our open Zoom sessions every day. So consider it your you know, like you're coming to our counseling lounge, and we have a little couch there for you. And anything you want to come in and talk to us about ed tech related, you're welcome to do so 12:30 to 3:30 Monday through Friday at a Zoom link that you see right here. Okay, so let's get to the nitty gritty. So I'll try not to belabor what Respondus is all about, but predominantly this is for test integrity purposes, and it's great because it's built right into Blackboard by an integration piece with the Respondus mechanism that does live in the cloud, just like most of these kinds of things. And it is, I got to stress this to everybody that it's predominantly made for Blackboard exams. So anything, any test that is created inside of Blackboard can have Respondus applied to it. So what does an instructor do who has exams in McGraw-Hill Connect or in a Pearson site or something else? You can't really use this Respondus tool for NCC on those exams. But a lot of times those platforms provide a very similar proctoring or integrity technology for those exams, and I suggest that you use those inside of those platforms. Alternatively, if your platform doesn't offer anything, you can always make up an exam inside of Blackboard that's pretty much the same as what the exam would be in that other platform, third-party platform, and just, again, do the exam in Blackboard instead and apply the lockdown browser and monitor to that, okay? So let's go ahead and watch this short intro video. And before I do that, though, I want to make sure that I am sharing the audio so you see it or hear it. Okay, and let me know if everything comes through here. We got to, of course, probably get through some type of ad.
Through my online store alone, we've sold over $500,000 worth of spices. That's so crazy.
I went from selling to my town to selling nation.
All right.
If you're watching this, you're probably required to use Respondus Lockdown Browser for an online exam. Lockdown Browser is a different kind of browser. While taking an exam, you can't print, use other applications, visit other websites, you can't even search the internet for answers. I know, it takes all the fun out of online tests. But here's the good thing. Your classmates can't do those things either, so it's just your brain against their brain. A level playing field. Your instructor will provide a link for downloading and installing Lockdown Browser. When you start it, Lockdown Browser might warn you that certain applications have to be shut down before you continue, like screen capture programs, instant messaging, Skype, pretty much anything that lets you communicate with the outside world. You can close those applications yourself or let Lockdown Browser do it for you. The browser will then go to the login page for your online course. Log in like you normally do and locate the exam that requires Lockdown Browser. Remember, after the exam starts, you won't be able to do other things on your computer until you finish the exam. When you're done, just exit Lockdown Browser and you'll be all set. Your instructor might also require you to use a webcam with Lockdown Browser. This part is sometimes called Respondus Monitor, but just think of it as a webcam for Lockdown Browser. The nice thing about the webcam feature is that it lets you take exams from the comfort of your own home or from the other side of the world. Plus, you can take exams at any time of the day or night. The webcam will record what happens during the exam, and the instructor can review it afterward. So, if an exam requires you to use Lockdown Browser and a webcam, just start Lockdown Browser and locate the exam. Before the exam starts, you'll be guided through a check to make sure your webcam is running properly. Additional steps might also be required by your instructor, such as showing your ID or taking a video of your surrounding area. Once the exam starts, don't give the webcam another thought. Just focus on that test you stayed up all night studying for. When the exam is finished and you submit it for grading, the webcam will shut off automatically. That's pretty much it. Now, take a deep breath and good luck.
Okay, so we're already into the interactive portion of this presentation. What did that video solicit from you? What do you think of a mechanism like this? And is this going to be the panacea that you need for integrity and testing?
So we've used this. This is Jackie from nursing. So we've used this when we first had to go virtual because of COVID. And I think for the most part, we really liked Respondus. There was an advantage that if a student got locked out, we could enable them to get back in. Does Blackboard automatically have information that the students need, right, to log in or to download this?
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
Joe,
Yeah.
can I have a
Go ahead,
question.
Kathy.
So, sorry about that, statement. So this is the first time we are using the monitor aspect of Respondus.
Actually not. We used it before COVID when we still had Respondus. And we had a limited number of seats for it. So it was used as, we tested it in a couple of environments, actually quite a few years ago, probably almost 5 years ago. And then we started using it a little bit more extensively in 2018, maybe 19. I don't remember exactly how much, but Monitor has been available for a little while.
But now it's available to everyone.
To everyone. Mhm.
See, we see this as one of the advantages of having the Respondus lockdown monitor, because like during the pandemic when so much everything was online and we had a student with extended test time, and there are times we had to, from our home, even at night, just log in as a student and just watch that student so the faculty member was able to leave the room of just proctoring them, just watching them take the test. Now with the monitor, they will be able to take the test at the same time with every other student, and it just will be extended because if anything unforward happens, it will be flagged.
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to get into this too far, but I just want to let you guys know, because it wasn't really going to be part of my presentation, that another feature that we have with Respondus that we didn't have before, and it does allow you, there's a setting when you set your test up to actually use Zoom along with Respondus lockdown browser. And many faculty were actually using Zoom as a proctoring tool to watch their students via Zoom while they took a test over the past year and a half. So that's actually built into Respondus lockdown browser now as well, but we won't go into that. You can probably find some information on it if you wanted to. Thanks for that, Kathy. Joe, did I answer the question for you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Dave, are you available to speak? Can you just remind me, what course are you teaching?
I teach business law, Joe.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering, you're doing Blackboard exams in business law?
Yep, exactly.
All right, very good. All right. And have you used Respondus before?
Yeah, I used it. I used it over the summer. I don't feel like I used it well.
Okay.
I just, again, it's just. Am I the only one who gets a lot of questions? The immediate feedback I get from students is, well, this doesn't work on a phone. This doesn't work on a tablet.
Okay.
First of all, are both those statements true?
I'm going to say depends. Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, my first throwback on something like that, and I'll go with the phone first, is why would you want to be taking a test on your phone?
Right.
And I realize that maybe we have some people that's their option. But a phone is definitely out, because you can't actually add this application to a phone.
Okay.
It's possible to use an iPad, and there is actually a setting that you have to turn on for that. And there is a Apple App Store application for the Respondus lockdown browser for iPads. That's as it goes. So it's meant for a Windows environment on a PC. It's meant for a Mac environment on any of their main computer platforms, and an iPad if you select it as an instructor. And now it's meant for Chromebooks. Great. That's what it's meant for. And again, I think we need to make sure our students understand that a phone, and tablet, not so bad, obviously, but a phone is meant for quickly maybe accessing some material or something like that in your course, or checking on a deadline or something like that, possibly maybe responding to a discussion. But it really limits what you can do and the experience that you have in your course excessively. And it's really not, these courses haven't been designed basically.
Exactly. Oh yeah. No. I'm please understand. I'm not agreeing with the.
No, I'm not saying that you are.
Sentiment.
Right.
And And one of the things, and I always know the ones who are doing other classwork on the phones, because when they will answer particular assignments, they will miss something. And they will all miss the same thing. And they'll say, oh, I didn't see that. And I'll be like, yeah, you didn't see it because you were looking at it on a tiny little screen.
Right, right. So true. So true. And while we're talking about that, I do want to mention that Respondus Lockdown Browser is available at the institution too, and in our campuses, predominantly in spaces, you know, where students can go, library study rooms, learning centers, those kinds of things. Occasionally a lab that's sort of set aside for these kinds of things. Now, Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor is a little bit of a different bug, but again, they all have the installed product, and the installed product comes along with Monitor. Students can even take out a laptop from the libraries, and that may have a built-in camera and actually do their test that way. So it's not like they have to use their own device. And indeed, some people do come to campus now. They obviously weren't too much in the past year and a half, but now they are back on campus. And let me just throw this out there, and if we have enough time to talk about it, we will. But the weird thing about on-campus testing now is that they have to wear masks. And one of the features of Respondus Monitor when you're taking a test is facial detection. So what does the mask do to the detection portion of that test environment and recording? Because you know, there's a flagging mechanism that's AI, artificial intelligence that's built into Respondus Monitor that will flag certain things that happen while the video is being recorded. And obviously, in certain cases, you may get false positives, especially for something like a mask. Again, let's not go down that road too much, but we can talk about it a little bit more at the end. Okay, any other thoughts? Just wanted to, let me just stop for a second and see if there's any other thoughts. Okay, and I just want to mention that, you know, Respondus Lockdown Browser is not Fort Knox. It's a lock on a door. It doesn't necessarily totally guarantee that you've got an exam that's integrous. Is that a word? I don't know. That has been done without violation. It's the best tool that we have to try to help prevent any cheating, and it's the best tool we have for you to try to monitor that circumstance. Okay. All right. Has anybody actually used Proctoria and needs to understand what the circumstances are moving to Respondus Lockdown Browser? And if not, I won't even belabor this issue.
Joe, I just have a question about, in my menu on Blackboard, it still has Proctoria, do not remove, and all this stuff. I can get rid of all that, right?
You certainly can, and that's kind of what this post is about here in the Padlet. You know, we're trying to ask you to delete the references that are there. You have that, Jackie, because what did you do? You copied from previous courses.
Right.
So whatever was in the courses got dumped into your navigation menu and stuff like that. So feel free to clean up and
Okay.
all remnants of that out of there.
Good. Okay.
And the last thing I'll say about that is just know that Proctoria exams have to be modified so that that mechanism is taken out of those exams if you want to continue using those exams with Respondus on top of them. And there's some instructions for that over here in the second column, which we'll just briefly point out. Now, relatively speaking, the system requirements for your student to actually use Respondus Lockdown Browser is pretty low, but obviously, as mentioned with Dave, one of the things is, hey, what platforms does it work on and all that kind of stuff. And you can get that information right here in that link. Okay. Some of this information obviously is available to your students as well, and we'll get to that. So what's it all about actually setting it up in your course? Let's do another quick video. I better not take too much time on these videos, but this is going to be a little bit more on the course side look of everything.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
Respondus Lockdown Browser is a custom browser that locks down the testing environment in Blackboard. When students use Respondus Lockdown Browser, they are unable to print. This prevents students from the test. Institution's login page startup, Respondus Lockdown Browser test.
So once the application is installed by the student, and you're not doing that on a Chromebook because Chromebooks don't install applications, but what there is in a Chromebook is sort of like an add-in that will happen automatically when a student goes to take the exam. Okay. In any case, the lockdown browser is something that will go on their computer, and they have to run this lockdown browser to go to Blackboard to get to the exam. Okay? Any other way that they try to get the exam is wrong and will provide some type of error for them. Okay? So lockdown browser is the mechanism.
Upon startup, Respondus Lockdown Browser goes directly to the institution's login page for Blackboard. Students then log in by entering their Blackboard username and password.
Let's talk about that for a second. Some students don't know that their Blackboard password is different than my NCC and now Workday. All right, but it is. So they may need to be schooled a little bit on that Blackboard password and also change it accordingly afterwards. But initial Blackboard passwords, this has become a little bit dicier now that Workday and the new concept of what we're doing with students new to fall 21 and to the institution being handled. But previously, for those of you that didn't know this, when a student got set up in Blackboard, their password was the same as their username. And their username was their student ID when they went to log into Blackboard at this page right here. So basically their default password in Blackboard was student ID and username and student ID and password. Now, for anybody who's a brand new student for fall 21 and is only working in Workday, there's a whole new password schema that we provided for them. And that password schema is a little bit more, I wouldn't say complex, but it goes on the basis of their first initial of their first name, their first initial of their last name, an exclamation point, the year of their birth, and the month of their birth. So it's automatically been inputted that way into Blackboard and into Workday, but most students may not get the word on that, and that's how you have to help them in some cases. Just know that that exists, that when they come to this page, they may be like, wait a minute, I never log into Blackboard directly. I always went through my NCC, and you may hear some questions about that.
Students then log in by entering their similar to a standard web browser, but several features have been removed, such as the menu bar, the address field for entering URLs, the start button in Windows, and the system tray. Only the back, forward, stop, and refresh buttons are retained. The right mouse button has also been disabled, along with keyboard operations such as function keys and task switching keystrokes. The source code for the web page can't be viewed either. Once the student selects the Blackboard course, the assessment is then located and selected. If the setting for the test requires that Respondus Lockdown Browser be used, and if the student is using Respondus Lockdown Browser, then everything will appear as normal. However, if the student attempts to start the test using a browser other than Respondus Lockdown Browser, as is now being shown, the screen will display a message indicating that the test can only be taken with Respondus Lockdown Browser.
Burn the vision of what's on the screen into your mind right now. This is the most popular support question that we get and that you'll get about using this tool. Okay? So it basically means that the student is going through Chrome, Safari, Firefox, instead of through the lockdown web browser.
Once the assessment begins, students are prevented from exiting the browser until the assessment is submitted for grading. Not only are students prevented from going to other websites or switching to other applications, they are also prevented from accessing other areas in Blackboard while taking the assessment. Test questions can include images, flash files, or PDF files, just as with a standard browser. The equation editor and other exam tools can also be used as normal. If a question contains a link to another URL, it will open a new locked window that won't allow navigation beyond that initial page. So for example, if the content in the new browser window happens to include a link to a search engine, students will be unable to access the search link from that new page. When ready, the student will submit the test for grading. It is now possible to exit the browser. All other applications that were running prior to the start of Respondus Lockdown Browser will be available at this time. To learn more about Respondus Lockdown Browser, please contact your Respondus representative or go to www.respondus.com.
Or nccedtech at northampton.edu. All right. Any questions after viewing that?
So if students are on, when they open Blackboard, they're already in NCC, right?
Correct, because in addition, when the student will have a download link in order to install that on their device. That download link is very specific to NCC so that when the browser runs on the computer, it takes them directly to BB at NCC login page, no other institution. So, I mean, that does happen from time to time. We talk about support tickets, but for a student that might be at multiple institutions, let's just say they're at Moravian and Moravian uses Blackboard and they use Respondus. Guess what? They may have installed Respondus on their computer for Moravian, but that's a very specific link. So basically they'd have to have two links, one for NCC and one for Moravian on their computer, and they would use the NCC one for an NCC Blackboard test and vice versa.
So to start the test, they would still go to my course first?
No. Respondus
No?
Lockdown Browser.
Okay.
Okay, they've installed that on the computer. That's the first thing they're going to do is run that browser as if they were starting Chrome or as if they were starting Firefox or Safari. They're going to run that browser instead. And then they're going to log into Blackboard. They're going to get to your course. They're going to find your test and they're going to take it.
Okay, so they start with okay.
First point of them taking a test, hit start Respondus Lockdown Browser icon on the desktop, in the start menu, wherever they put it.
Hey, Joe, this is Andrea. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so I had my first quiz yesterday on Respondus, and just to go with Jackie's point, you tell them to download, the app, but they just think they have to download it and don't go through it. I had a million emails. I need a password. I'm like, I never put a password. So it was a struggle, to get them through it. But if they don't go through that app, it's a nightmare for the instructor. So word to the wise.
Thank you. All I can say is there's a lot of resources. This Padlet is one for you right now, but we're going to talk about the ones built right into the course for both you and them. And if people will avail themselves of those resources, things will be a lot smoother. And the other thing we're going to talk about, you're going to see that in column number 4, and it's up there right now. Practice test with Respondus. Make sure you do that. Give your students the opportunity to go through it and fail, and then you can answer their questions when they fail, et cetera, so that when you do exam number 1 for 25% of their grade, that they don't have this problem. Okay, anything else? Good questions. Thank you. All right, So we're not going to talk about this converting Proctoria exams, but you have a resource for it if you need it. Okay. Now, one of these videos that I think is on the Padlet is going to indicate that going to your course tools in your Blackboard course, that the one that's not in the control panel is the way that you access Respondus Lockdown Browser dashboard or tool inside your course. That's not true. You have to go to your course tools in the control panel, okay? That's what this is indicating here. You're going to go down to where you do your grade center and all the other things down there. And when you go to course tools, you get that big list of things in the menu area that opens up. For instance, your test surveys and pools, or your, give me another one. What else do you do in there? Safe assign or something like that. You'll see a reference to Respondus Lockdown Browser. And when you click on that tool, again, it'll be over in this panel, but way down below under your control area. When you click on that, this is what will open if you don't have any exams in your course yet. But again, want you to see that you will have even resources right there when you click on that dashboard tool for the first time in your course. There's a video, here's a rollout guide, here's another button for resources, and you have all these things at your fingertips when you go into that dashboard, which is the actual feature built into Blackboard. All right, and so now that you have a Blackboard test, and I hope we don't have to go to creating a Blackboard test, that's another topic for another day, but once you have a Blackboard test in Blackboard, they will show up in this dashboard. There will be a list of them here, basically, and then you can apply the tool to it. And you'll get a choice to choose Lockdown Browser or require it, and or monitor as well, requirement. Okay, now this post right here is giving you a video for actually setting up the test in this tool. And it's also a PDF guide. And I'll just open up the PDF guide. You can watch that video on your own time, because we're going to go through it anyway, and I'm going to show you how it's done. But this is a guide that's available to you inside your course, as well as in this Padlet. And it explains everything about the process of using LDB and monitor from an instructor's point of view. Right? Very comprehensive. I ask that you read it. Sometimes we'll get inquiries from faculty, and I'll literally go to this guide. I'll pick out some wording from the guide, and I'll paste it into an email and send it as a response back to that faculty person. So, you know, this information is here and is very, very, very good. All right, let's talk about some help for instructors. So in the third column over here, we're going to basically go through this Padlet, and then we're going to look at it in an active sense. So the first place that you're going to find built into your course is part of the template information that we provide in every shell when the semester comes up and we tell you, hey, good news, your Blackboard courses are available. I know how good news that is. This is where it's located, in the area called Info for Instructors on the menu, which we always have as hidden from the students, but it's not hidden from your view. And then you have to navigate to Tools and Technology Support, and then go to Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor. And then you'll see the information there. I'll bring that up when we have a live course. This is a really good document that we put together that indicates some tips for using Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor. Again, I'm not going to go through every one of these tips, but we'll call this the top 5, okay? And very important stuff, including what I've indicated already before, okay? Right there. A couple of things to remember. Maybe I'm going to add to this that you can actually integrate Zoom with a Ldb session if you want to as well. I'll add that here. And how that the students might need help with their login if they're going directly into Blackboard. and how you go about fixing any errors right inside the dashboard when you're in your course if something's not working right. Let me just say that anytime you've added Respondus requirement to an exam, if you ever go into that exam before you start having your students take it and modify anything, make sure you come back to the dashboard and be certain that it doesn't say fix it to you. Because even if you change the name of your test, it could break the link with Respondus, and then hitting that fix it button will just automatically bring it back together. It's a really cool tool that they added on that they didn't always have. And basically you had to go into your test or your test options and you had to do everything right. And then you had to redo the requirement for Respondus. But now there's just a nice little fix it button. And we do have Respondus giving webinars themselves. And there's a link to that in their webpage right here on this document. Does this all seem like good stuff? Crickets. I'll say, yeah, it is. Okay. This is just a reiteration of this important piece of information, because again, it's the most active question that you're going to get, that help desk is going to get, that we're going to get. And it talks about that whole concept with the password. So I basically have highlighted, this is directly from Respondus, but I've highlighted the things that you really need to understand. And I think it would help to have a conversation with me or Sandy or somebody about it, just so you get it and you can explain the whole process to your students and you know what's going on when this happens. It's not overly complicated at all, but this whole password concept is the essence of how the mechanism shuts people out of taking the exam unless they go through Respondus. Respondus wouldn't be any good at all if it didn't use the quote unquote password mechanism inside your test options in Blackboard. Okay.
Joe, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So I usually never use the password in Proctoria. Are you suggesting we do in Respondus?
No.
Okay.
So there is a feature when you're setting up your exam in the Respondus Lockdown Browser dashboard tool that says, do you want to have a password? It says optional, and I wouldn't fill that out, okay? But once you're done clicking submit on the requirement in general without a password there, if you went into your test options right after you've done the submission of that requirement for RLDB, and you looked down the page of your options for your test, you're going to see a cryptic password in the password field. Now, some people will be like, I didn't put a password in there, and they'll take it out. Well, you've just defeated the RLDB mechanism. I guess people were trying to get a hold of me. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have this Respondus support site. They have a pretty good support site, a place to go to for getting answers. So utilize that. Let's talk a little bit about this, but I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, especially since you have this mechanism built in. But if you choose to require monitor, which is the video recording portion, you'll actually have an opportunity to review the class results and everybody's video, if you will, and any flags that's in there inside the dashboard. This is a very good document that was not given to us, but provided by University of Houston, and explains all the different things about that mechanism for reviewing, the test results by your students, okay? You get into it via the same tool that you put the requirement on. Here you are, this is what the dashboard looks like when you actually have tests. You know, you can require LDB and you can require monitor. You can't have monitor without LDB, all right? Now, when you actually have results, you get to see each of the individual students, you hit the plus button, and you get to see the flags, you can watch the video, et cetera, and you can know what happened during the exam. Again, you have to take this with a grain of salt. It's not perfect. You may find some false positives, and you may have to just in Proctoria, and Jackie might remember this, we could actually change the level that we wanted to apply to the flagging that was done by that proctorial tool. We don't have that capability in Respondus. It's static. So, it's going to provide a priority, which you can see right here above the head, as to whether they think it's suspicious or not in their own terminology. But you can review how they classify that, things like that, in this document or within that dashboard on the help for Respondus reviewing. Just wanted you to know that that was available. Now, we did this training back in the summer, and we already have a recording of that workshop if you wanted to view it. When this recording is done, I will put it in here as well. All right, let's move on to the students before we get into the live session. Now, they have resources right in the course, part of the template information that we put into it. It's basically thrown as the only item in learning content prior to you possibly copying your stuff from the previous semester. But it exists as a folder, and it says Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor for Blackboard tests. So there's information about taking online exams in Blackboard in general in there that will be helpful to them. And then there's very specific information in there for them about Respondus and some links. We'll see that when we get into a course. Again, right here in this Padlet, here's a video for the students. Here's the student version of that quick start guide. Again, that's accessible inside of Blackboard as well. And this is what the students should definitely read, before going through the process. It's a little bit shorter than yours, only one page. Okay. And really, really important, and I mentioned it already, set up a practice test for Respondus Lockdown Browser in your course. This is the best way to provide that to them. Now, I indicate here low or no stakes, but you know what? If you really want to make sure they do this, maybe it's not a bad idea to say, hey, this test is going to be a syllabus quiz, or maybe you had an orientation video for your course. It's going to be a quiz about what was in that orientation video to try to get them to obviously test Respondus Lockdown Browser, but at the same time to answer questions so you know or don't know that they watched your orientation video or they looked at your syllabus for some important information. You decide that, but just know that it's a good idea to do something with RLDB before you get to a major stakes test in your course. All right, so those are all the pieces in this Padlet and all the resources. Hopefully that's helpful to you. And now we're going to jump to a course unless I have some questions. We can ask some questions while I jump to the course.
Joe, can I ask just one additional comment? That students that are eligible for screen readers, and they may be
Thank you.
students that are eligible for test reader, but doing these online courses, they have the ability with screen readers to complete them at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we have read and write screen readers that's available to all instructors and students in your Blackboard course. And just to reassure you, even when we had Respondus previously, the students cannot get out to the internet even on their read and write dashboard. But the most important thing is before they go into Respondus, they must have the read and write, they must open read and write, their dashboard must be up for them to have the questions read to them. If they open Respondus first and the Blackboard test and they're like, well, I can't get my screen reader, there is nothing that can be done unless you reopen the course for them.
Fantastic, Kathy. I appreciate that very much. So here we are in a very messy demo course that we use all the time. Bottom line, I'm going to just start from the perspective of something that's been done, okay? And this is more or less just to give you a viewpoint and a perspective. So lots of times we try to put the learning content, including exams, in all one space. So here we are in the learning content. And as I said, it's quite messy, but you can see that down here, we actually have a test. And once you take a test and you require Respondus by turning it on in the dashboard, it's going to modify the actual name of the exam. And you could see how it's modified this one. With Monitor, it'll throw this webcam piece in there. But if it's just RLDB, it'll throw this tag onto the test name. So this is how your students will come to it, but not through my Chrome browser, through the Respondus lockdown browser, they will come to it. So this is what it looks like in your course after you've actually enabled the requirement for RLDB. But you're going to access it through the control panel down here, not from tools. Oh, this doesn't even have course tools. How about that? So all the courses, except this one, do have a course tools section up here where your students would access course tools. Oh, here it is right here. Course tools. But you get it from the course tools down here in your control panel. When you expand that, you can see under R, you have Respondus Lockdown Browser. Now this course has a lot of stuff, and you can see that some stuff we've required LDB, some stuff we didn't. These are all the exams that are in this course. Obviously, there hopefully won't be this many exams in your course. Now here's one right here, that test 1, that requires both Respondus Monitor and Lockdown Browser. Again, you can come in here to actually set this, and you can come in here to see the results, and you can come here to get some statistics, okay, from this dashboard for Respondus. So what would we do to actually apply to a test? So here's a test that exists. All you would do is open the expand this menu and go to settings. And here's your first question. Do you want to require it or not? We're going to say yes. Again, you have to have Lockdown Browser if you want Monitor. Here's that password that Jackie was asking about. I say, don't use it. Now, the only time where we've ever recommended using this is, remember when we used to have a library testing center? And if you knew that some of your students were going to be taking it outside of the library, but some of the students were going to go into the testing center, this might be something that we would give to the testing center proctor so that they could get the students to access the tests that way at the testing center. But for all intents and purposes, I don't see any reason why you have to put a password here. You may need to do, like, if you have one rogue student, possibly put a password in for them. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws. I know that Shenanigans is here. Do you want to jump in on that, Sandy, at all? Are you paying attention, or are you off doing something else? She might be off doing something else. Okay, so in any case, I'll go down to
again, Joe. I'm sorry.
I'm wondering if you see any reason why an instructor would ever want to put an optional password here at the RLDB level.
The only reason I could think of is, let's just say you had a student that had to take a test at a different time, like maybe they were going to be out of town during the day the test was being given, or, for some other reason, you could always make, always put a password in there after the fact, and then that student would be able to go in and take it.
Yep, I see that too. And I think that your better mechanism there, rather than using this password, would be to do an exception.
Yeah.
And have that person an exception and say, oh, that person's allowed to access this exam and nobody else is. That's probably a better way to do it.
True. And one other thing, I've had students that have been in other places, in other countries. And so in that case, they need, maybe they need a proctor, even though we don't have, it may be just, that situation they're in. And so I would put a a password in there just for them.
Perfect, thank you. Notice I expanded the advanced settings. Dave asked about this. Here's where you've got the iPad possibility. You have to check this off, okay? And here's a couple other things that you can set if you want to. Now that we have the requirement for LDB, we're given the option for proctoring, which is the webcam. So we've got these two options here, all right? Here's the monitor option, which is just the webcam that's built in to this tool. And it tells you about this add-on feature and blah, 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 what it does. You can obviously dispense of this mechanism so you never see it again, but it just continue to actually do the settings. So the whole idea of using monitor is to possibly proof who the student is, but it's a proofing mechanism that's only as good as you looking at what is recorded and saying, okay, I think that's my student. There's no mechanism that takes a student's ID and goes out to the web and says, I'm verifying this student's identity or anything like that. That doesn't exist, okay? But here are the steps that you can choose or not choose to have the student go through before they even start taking the exam. It's the preparation piece, if you will, to them using the monitor portion. Here's that facial detection area that we talk about. And here's a couple of things that you can optionally take off if you want to during that facial detection. And last but not least, some more advanced settings, particularly for the monitor portion here. Okay. Don't want to get into the weeds on this, but if you have any particular questions about any of these settings, you can obviously email us about them, come to our walk-in session, go out to the Respondus support website, whatever it is you'd like to do. So once we allow all this, and we're going to obviously do this, and let me indicate to you, I mentioned this right here, that you do have this capability. It's obviously either or. You're either going to proctor with Zoom or you're going to proctor with the monitor that's built into Respondus Lockdown Browser. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and save and close. And now you'll see when we get to the dashboard, it is that this test, which didn't have the requirement on before, now has the requirement for both tools. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So this was one in which I was just testing myself taking the exam as a student recently for various reasons. And here's where you can go to the results. I'm going to go through this rather quickly. Now, this isn't very justifiable because this is mostly just a bunch of play students that is in this demo course. But you can see I actually have some submissions. In fact, I have multiple submissions. This was me doing testing, and I wasn't able to get all the way through to the exam. This was an issue that we were having on the Wi-Fi at Monroe for the past couple of days that we've resolved. But this would be one where you could see the priority here. This particular one was successful and it had low priority. Here's another one with high priority. But here's the actual video that we have. And I can run through this video just by playing it. And I can see whatever happened. As it plays, it shows you some flags and or milestones over on the right-hand side here. And then it also gives you review priority up at the top here. Might have been where I was going to test for a mask, yeah. But this is the essence of what reviewing would be like for you right inside the tool. Again, I wish we could change this priority level, but we can't. So it's going to be up to you to decide. You probably, the first time you do this, you might want to take a look at everybody just to see what you could see. And for one reason, mainly, I would say, to establish sort of a benchmark. Because again, this tool being a lock on a door, but not necessarily a fail-safe mechanism, is maybe when you look at and review their first initial go around with the tool, if you get suspicious about anything in exam 2 or exam 3 or whatever, you have that as a reference point that you could go back to where it might help you say, I see something strange or a little different about this video versus that video of that particular student. And you don't necessarily, I mean, these are going to be available to you in the course. You can always jump back to any exam results and review them. Okay, I really think that that's the basis of the presentation and the interaction and the demonstration. At this point, I'm just going to stop the share and see if we have any particular questions or comments.
So where's the setup if we do not want students to get their test results until, like, let's say after we do a item analysis? Like, I'd like to look at what the students have first, do an item analysis. Sometimes, you know, there's a bad question or a question that's not clear. So I don't want students to have any results.
So that has nothing to do with Respondus. And that's a mechanism that's built right into the Blackboard test options. I will send you information about that directly, Jack.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Feedback. No, I mean, that's actually the section of the test options page is called feedback.
Oh, okay.
I'm making a note for myself to remind me to send that to you. Okay, anybody else?
Joe, in terms of the number of questions that you guys are getting hit with about this from students, is it a lot? Is it the same ones over and over, or how's it working out?
I think what we'll experience, since this is a new round with Respondus at NCC, since we took a year hiatus, probably what we'll experience is we've got brand new students. Obviously, we do every fall and every semester, but they're going to be the ones that have questions. Last year's students didn't use Respondus, so they're going to have questions too. But given that the likelihood that once a student does it once and does it correctly, they are not going to have problems, and that, oh, I did it in that course, we're doing it in this course too, I know how to do this. It's going to take maybe a little time, but it'll eventually become more second nature through NCC community for both instructors and for students. At the onset though, sure, we're going to get our cadre of questions. I do believe the most important one is the one that I've talked about 3 times. And if we can get that out there at the forefront and make sure or ensure that they pay attention to that, and faculty pay attention to that, we're going to do our best to get it out to faculty, then I think we'll be okay. But you know, we know how it is. Any information you provide, Dave, is a crapshoot as to whether or not it gets to the recipient or it doesn't.
Yeah, no, I know with my course, there's literally, you know, for just getting used to everything with the ebooks and stuff like that, I literally have something that says read this before you do anything else.
Yeah.
And yet I get a half dozen messages that week saying, how do I start?
And thanks for reminding me. I just thought I didn't show you where that student information was, did I? Let's go back to that real quick. So it's not in this course home. I have another course up here that's brand new. Okay, so here's a brand new course that isn't actually being used. And if I go to learning content, this is in every course by default. The important thing for you to know is that it's hidden. You know, not everybody uses Respondus. So if you use Respondus, unhide this so your students can see it. And you can move it to wherever it's most practical for your students to access this, near the exam, in the same folder as exams, if you decide not to put the exams in the learning content folder. But if you click into here, you'll see that we have general information and then very specific information about Respondus. This is that download link. This will take them right to Respondus download. This is the key to NCC, all right, being our specific Blackboard login page for the students. And then, here's that information that they can watch, and here's that guide that they can read. So we provide some information for them, but you need to make it available. You could also get rid of this optional tag in the title. Make sense?
Absolutely.
And then again, under info for instructors, this takes one other click. You got to go actually to this tools and technology support, and then scroll down to Respondus Lockdown Browser, and here's your information for you in the course. We give you that download as well in case you need to pass it along to your students in some other way. Also, it's not a bad idea for you to actually download and try the darn thing out yourself, so you can experience it. But there's also a lot of videos you can watch that show the student side of it. Okay, I think I'm done showing. Any other thoughts or questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Appreciate you showing up today. Hope this was helpful. I will put the recording out. You have the link to the Padlet, and I'm doing this again tonight at 6:30 if you want to join in and give me a break. Like when I get to a point where you fully understand something, you can chime in and I'll walk away, get a drink or something like that. You can take over.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, thanks, Joe.
All right. See y'all. I'm going to stop the recording and wish you everybody a good Thursday.